painting their fence. And I've learned for me that when I need to find an answer to something, I paint. And I spent the whole afternoon with my headphones in, listening to music that like spoke to me, and I just painted the fence. It was brown. It wasn't even a pretty paint job. Like it was just something to do to make my brain space work. And I remember spending the whole time in constant conversation with my higher power, who for me is my Heavenly Father. And I just remember saying, Heavenly Father, I know I'm not broken, but I'm breaking. I've hit a point where I don't want to get out of bed. I don't want to even have to function. I'm so tired and I'm doing all the things. I'm saying my prayers, scriptures, I'm trying to work out, I'm trying like all these things and they're not working. What do I do? And towards the end of the day, I got the answer. And he's like, you need to spend more time in self-care. And I said, but I hate self-care. Like that is the biggest, just the word self-care is triggering. It was for me. And for so many women, it's a trigger.
It is. I totally agree with that.
Like, I don't want to do self-care. I don't have time to put my whole day on pause to go just sit and do and be. And I said, I don't like that answer. I want a different one.
I bet you didn't get a different one, huh?
I did not get a different one. He was like, well, I know you don't like self-care, and that's because for you, you're doing self-care wrong. I said, how do you do bubble baths wrong? And through further conversation and a lot of arguing on my end, he actually gave me a gift, which was what I turned into a 30-day journal of self-care things. And he said, just you use this yourself. It's a great thing for anybody, but you start using it yourself and see what happens. And I went home and I typed up that whole journal in one night because it was that ready, that handed to me. And I'd honestly never had a moment like that before. And it's a combination of a lot of things I've learned over the last 10 years about what I need from myself. And they're basic things that people don't think of as self-care.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I know self-care for me as well has been a very triggering word because, I grew up not in a space where, girly stuff was really, prominent. And that's what I always thought that self-care is the girly things, like the hair, the makeup, the fingernails. And it's not that I don't like that. I like that now. As I've gotten older, I realize, oh, I do like having my nails done. Oh, I like having my nails done, but it doesn't fulfill me. It doesn't make me feel cared for. It makes me feel pampered, but pampered and cared for are two different things.
Right. And that's where a lot of the disconnect is for people because like, oh, if I just have a spa day, my whole life will turn around. No, you'll go home and your nails will be pretty and your feet will be wrinkly. I mean, it does do something for you, but it's not what you're looking for in here for it to do for you.
Yes, exactly. I know for myself and clients that I've worked with in the past, self-care can be scary. And a lot of it is because they're not used to just sitting with themselves and being in that space. Can you share with us just a little bit of some tools or maybe something that you would suggest those that are like, they don't want to take the time to just sit and be still or be with themselves for that matter?
So honestly, I still struggle with meditating because in everyone's mind, meditating, and I will one day get to this point where I can actually sit without moving and actually process and be with myself. I can't do it for very long right now because I get all impatient. I'm like, no, I gotta go do stuff. So I actually have like two of my favorite ways to meditate is one when I'm running.
Mm.
I have certain music that just speaks to me, and it does more for me than trying to sit quietly with myself. And that allows me to just process what's going on while having an outlet, the physical outlet of, all right, here's all these feelings and emotions. And instead of them just staying here or wherever they're going to stick in my body, I'm releasing them as they're coming up and out. My other favorite for meditating is actually in the shower.
Oh, yeah.
Because you have to shower anyway, at least you should. And for me, how it works is as soon as I turn on the shower, I set an intention of what I want to feel like when I come out of that shower. And if there's something that I know I need to let go of, I take it in the shower with me. And I put an intention around what color, like from your, like a chakra color. I pick a chakra color of whatever chakra needs help that day. And in my mind's eye, I see that as the color of the water. And so it just completely covers and fills where it needs to while getting rid of all the garbage. And if there's hard feelings I know I have, I speak them out loud and let them go down the drain. And then I can get out of my shower and move on with my day. And I've already released a ton, and it's only whatever time in the morning you shower.
I love that. I've done that as well. Not so much as, colors, but I have intention. So like when I have those negative feelings and those hurts, I just visualize it's all coming out of my pores as the warm water is like the light from God. It's just like filling all of those spaces that I just emptied with all that yucky stuff. So I love that imagery, and that it's like, it's not just imagery, but it's like body learning too, because when the body can be incorporated with the visualization, it seems to happen faster. The shift and the change happens quicker. At least in my experience, it has.
Yeah. Another thing that I will do is if I find myself throughout the day getting really cranky and I find that I'm talking back to my children tone for tone, I'll check in with myself and go, all right, have I eaten my 3 meals today? Because as someone who is prone to forgetting to eat because of old patterns, it's really easy to go, oh, well, I skipped breakfast because I was helping this kid with their math and getting this kid off to the bus. And where was yesterday's project that we've got to send it? Like, mornings are so hectic that it's really easy to forget breakfast. And lunch, honestly, I like food and making food, but lunch I feel like is the most boring meal to make food for. Like, what do you do? And so lunch is easy to skip. And then it's dinner time and you're like, I've not eaten all day. Why am I ornery? Why am I tired? Why am I moody? And that for me has become a self-care thing of, have I eaten? And not only what have I eaten, but what have I eaten? If I fueled my body with garbage all day, I'm going to have a garbage day. I'm going to treat people around me like garbage because that's what I'm fueling myself with. And so I like to pay attention to what I put in my body.
I love that. That has also been, when I was a teenager, I suffered with anorexic belief systems. And it's interesting because I overcame the actual not eating aspect, but the belief system never went away. And it wasn't until, I don't know, probably 3 years ago that I realized that that programming was still so a part of my everyday life, that when I went through my divorce, it was really prominent because it was such a stressful time period for me. And especially when my children would leave to go to be with their father, I would spend the entire week in bed and not eat a thing and barely even drink anything and not even have a problem or an inkling about it. And that I did find that having somebody that could call somebody that would check up on me was another part of that self-care, because I was not, when you're going through that kind of trauma and that kind of just stress in your life, the normal everyday things do not become a normal everyday thing. And you need someone in your life to help you to stay in that normal, moving forward aspect, especially when you come from an abusive relationship. And so, when I was in that space, I would have ladies in my arena that would call me and be like, okay, how are you doing today? Did you eat? And I'd be like, I don't think so. I don't know. Like, it just, because your brain's not there. You're just processing all this emotion. And food's like the last thing you think about. Self-care is the last thing you think about. Drinking water is the last thing you think about. And it just creates so much more trauma for the body, because now it's like trying to function. It doesn't have anything to function with, while you're still trying to move forward with your emotions and your mindset too. So I know those of you that may be struggling, and it does not have to be an eating disorder, but it could be struggling with, self-care, as far as just seeing yourself as in a good light because of maybe neglect or abuse or trauma that you've gone through. It's so important to have, those people in your corner that can help you stay somewhat stable while you're going through all of this chaos.
Right. And I've been through relationships that were abusive, and with the eating disorder on top of it. And I didn't do anything with that for a long time. That was the weight I held on to. I didn't hold on to any physical weight, but that was so heavy. And I was finally in a space where I could like figure out what to do with it and how to get rid of it when I had my youngest, my little boy. And I didn't want to numb out again, because he had doctor appointment after doctor appointment for about a year and a half. We had probably a doctor appointment every other week.
Oh, wow.
And they were like hard appointments where they would be like putting him in almost a like from his under his arms to his waist, they would put in a cast for a couple months. And they have to knock him out for that. And just different tests we had to run. And I knew I didn't want to go back to trauma. And that was enough to put me there. And so I went back just to the basics. Have I eaten? Have I showered? Have I had water? Have I even gone for a 10-minute walk? Have I called my support group?
Mm-hmm.
And because I was able to start at the basics, when you're in that much trauma, you have to keep it simple, is the number one thing I've learned. You have to let go of being Superwoman and having so many expectations and comparison, because I was like, well, this mom over here is doing the same thing and she's like rocking marathons. Like, I need to not like compare and judge, because that'll just add more trauma. And as I was able to slowly work through just the basics, I was able to add in small things like, oh, I like this blanket. This is my new favorite blanket. That's self-care. Or fuzzy slippers are my jam. I probably have like 7 pair of them, and I get a new pair every couple of weeks in the winter. But that's not a shoe addiction. That's self-care.
Right.
And I've been able to add in bigger things, like, because when you're in trauma, you also don't really have an opinion. Mm-mm. It's just whatever's easiest, whatever's fastest, just whatever is going to make everyone be happy.
Right. And you don't want to deal with decisions.
Mm-hmm. And so it was things as simple as, where do you want to eat? I don't know, wherever you want to eat. What's your favorite color? I don't know, what's yours? Like, really dumb things, but it extends into so much more that I didn't know who I was anymore. Mm-hmm. And as I did basic self-care, I could add in things like, oh, I like to go boating, but I don't like to get out of the boat into the water. Okay, like, that's fine. Or just adding in, because adventures are my thing, but they've only been my thing for about a year, because I didn't know what I liked. I didn't know what kind of adventures I would want to go on or what I would want to do. And it took me being brave enough to try out a few things and go, oh, it's not for me. And finding I really do like things like zip lining, where before I would have never thought about doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of funny because a lot of my self-care to other people looks like not their self-care. And so, like for me, my closest group, like my family, they don't understand my self-care. And when I'm in trauma, that hurts. That's painful. They should love me and understand. When I'm not in trauma, it's okay. It's just not their thing.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just worried about me. And that's really what being authentic in self-care is going, okay, I like to run. My mother doesn't like to run. That's fine. When I started running, it was about 6-7 years ago. I was still very underweight. I was trying to gain weight. And I had this idea that maybe if I started running, I would be hungry enough to eat. And that has actually worked for me. If I work my body out enough to remind it that, hey, we're still here, we still need a fuel, I will actually eat. And I'm at right now my healthiest weight I've been without pregnancy. And
wow, that's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you. And it's just important to remember that there is going to be concern. My mom was just concerned that I was going to lose more weight. And I just got to hold my own ground and still love her through her disapproval of that. I'm going to start doing a version of 75 hard. And I told my mom and all my sisters at lunch yesterday, and I was so excited. And they're like, why would you do that? That's dumb. I'm like, because I want to. Because it's going to make me feel good. And
I can.
And it's going to actually make me take care of myself because it includes my foods, my water, my workout, my mindset. Like, that's my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I can just smile and go, it's okay. You don't have to join me. And just kind of let it go at that.
Yes.
And that's actually really important when you start doing self-care because you're going to be changing even little things about yourself. And everyone around you is so used to you being exactly the way you are, even if it's not healthy for you, that there's going to be some pushback.
Yep.
And it's just important to remember, no, this is for me and it's fine. I'm totally worth that meal that I need to eat. I'm totally worth that nap that I need to go take, but I'm telling myself I'm not that tired.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love that. And, and I think what you're describing here is being mindful of what our bodies are telling us. And that is a huge, huge thing about self-care, radical self-care. There's a difference between self-care and radical self-care, in my opinion, because self-care can be like, you go and you take care of yourself, you do your normal hygiene, you take your bubble baths, you do all that kind of stuff. But radical self-care means that you are showing up for your body. You're showing up for the different systems within you because you're willing to listen and you're willing to hear, not just listen, but hear and take action on it. And that's when it becomes radical self-care, because as we move through that and step into that radical self-care, we also step into our divine identity and we step into our divine femininity, which then allows us to move through, those traumas and those things that we're dealing with more grace and ease, so that we are able to, be teamed up to Heavenly Father, right? Because when we're in trauma, that's the first thing that we do is separate ourselves because we're in that pain. But when we can do the simple things like you're saying, and you start listening to our bodies, we start listening to what our hearts need, what our minds need, and we become mindful of it and take action, that brings us back into connection and then allows us to move forward with grace and ease.
Right. And it's really easy to listen to our mind because it's the loudest and
and the bossiest, I have to say. Mine's the bossiest.
Mine's bossy too. And
Mhm.
I've had to learn for me that my mind isn't always right.
Nope, it's
It
not.
it does its job of keeping me safe and alive, but that doesn't always make it right.
Nope.
And so then I realized that and I switched to listening to my heart, which for me is always right, even though
Mhm.
my heart and my head fight. And I still wasn't making the traction I wanted. And I had a coach go, well, are you listening to your body? I'm like, oh, I thought I was. They're like, your whole body. I'm like,
Right.
no, I hadn't thought about that because as a physical abuse survivor, you turn your body off.
Right.
You numb out. And I had numbed out for so long that unless it was like severe pain, I really didn't take notice of my body. I like didn't even think to ask, different parts of my body or even my body as a whole, what do we need?
Yes.
What do we need right now? And that's just being able to connect those has actually helped me move through things faster and easier
Yes.
because I
Wholehearted.
don't I don't have missing parts and pieces.
Yes. And I love that you brought that up because, we think that there's only three parts, but there isn't. And this is why I have my business, Five Elements of Wholeness, because we have our mental, emotional, spiritual, physical, and energetic. And a lot of times people don't pay attention to their, like, anything but their mental. That's the only thing. I know that that is what I lived in for the majority of my life, which is a very masculine energy. And it created so much distortion on my image and my identity that I did not believe I deserved self-care. And that why would I give myself self-care? I'm perfectly fine. I'm not sick. I'm not, da 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 da, right? We justify ourselves out of taking care of ourselves, which I think is the funniest thing, but we do. And because we don't have any physical ailments, like nothing is actually physically showing. We don't have a broken arm, we don't have a open wound or anything, but yet our bodies are just as ill as if we did have those things. We just don't pay attention to it because it's not on the outside showing it out to everybody else, right?
Right.
And how you numb our bodies, well, this is what happens when we numb our emotions, when we shut down the emotions. And that happens from emotional abuse, verbal abuse. We shut down our voice, quit using it, quit having an opinion, quit talking. And all of these things require that self-care, because using our voice, sharing our opinion is radical self-care, especially if you haven't been doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, sitting and feeling an emotion, that's radical self-care, because it's reteaching your systems how to trust you and learning how to move and navigate through all of that. And it doesn't necessarily have to be trauma either. It could just be something that triggered you. It could be a drama that something's going on in your family. It could be an experience that was painful. All of these different types of scenarios and experiences in our lives will shut down those different elements if we don't take care of ourselves with that radical self-care that you're talking about.
It's true. And the holidays are actually
One of the
the
worst.
hardest times to take care of ourselves because we give ourselves so much to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I love to bake. And I, for some reason, think I need to take a dozen cookies to every neighbor I've ever had in my whole life. And it actually causes more stress than joy, which for me, the point was supposed to be joy.
Mm-hmm.
And um, going back to it doesn't even have to be traumatic. Um, I've just spent the last week and a half moving to a new house, which has been amazing and not traumatic. But I also had to manage like 3/4 of the move because my husband still had to work because we ended up closing later and in the week. And I had a lot of help like loading the heavy stuff and unloading. But I really had to step into masculine energy to get it done when we needed.
Mm-hmm.
And I forget to step back out of
Yes.
masculine energy because it feels more comfortable than feminine for me still.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm still learning, oh, push and drive is masculine, not feminine. But
Yes.
also when we're in trauma, we step into that.
Well,
And
it's
so
because that masculine energy is protective
mhm,
energy.
right,
That's why our men step up and protect and be in that masculine, is because it's a protective, oh, I forgot what it's called, but it's a trait. There we go. It's a
mhm,
masculine trait. And so when our bodies are in trauma and our minds are in trauma, we immediately want protection. And if we're not getting it in the divine order, we will step into it and become the masculine.
right. And so that's still a part of me I am actively working on every day. And because I failed to remember to come out of masculine, I actually quit listening to my body because it just I live in feminine energy in my body. That's just how it is. And
Mm-hmm.
failing to come back to that feminine energy at the end of every day, I actually like numbed out again. And um, so this last week and a half, I've forgotten to do the things that are just basic, keep me sane self care things like my meals
Mm.
and my water. And I still needed to get some workout time in just to feel sane. And I just totally didn't go into that. And so as a result, I ended up eating a king size symphony bar and 2 boxes of orange sticks over this move. And once I remember to come back into feminine energy, I'm like, oh, I hurt. Like, this is not how I like to feel. And
Mm-hmm.
normally I would go, oh my gosh, I'm so stupid. Why would I do that? Like, I know better, which doesn't help. It actually takes longer to pull yourself out of that than it does just to slip right back into feminine and do your thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I've just
Not
kind
to
of,
say, not to mention, it also makes you feel worse,
yeah,
and then it
it does.
makes your body feel even more yucky.
Mm-hmm. And so this time I was like, well, I don't want to do that anymore. So we're just not going to buy orange sticks for a while, and I will focus on me instead of spending so much time making sure the house looks perfect for anyone that's going to come through and see it this next week.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I chose to set down because I actually value myself over my house looking nice. And a
Way to
lot of it
go.
is just determining, what is more important to me because I know where my body will go if I
Mm-hmm.
don't take care of it, and that's not worth it for me.
Mm-mm. Well, and I think it's so important to learn when to say no, and be okay with saying no, and not allowing ourselves to go down that rabbit hole of shame and blame and ridicule and self-abuse because we didn't measure up, or we didn't meet somebody's expectations, or we didn't get the approval of somebody. I know from my own experience, I mean, I would run that hustle for approval cycle like nobody's business. And that was the only way that I could ever function, because I thought that the only way that I had of any worth is if somebody else thought I had worth. And I literally would put myself to the brink of hospitalization to get approval from somebody because I felt so just worthless. And until I started taking care of myself on a regular basis, and I don't know if you've done this, but do self-affirmations, declarations. I know you and I both have had the same mentor where we do the dot thoughts, right? We take care of
Mm-hmm.
those dot thoughts and get rid of all that negative stuff. And I remember one time being in one of the events, and we're talking about Kirk Duncan, 3 Key Elements, and he brought his notebooks of all of the stuff that he put all the negatives and all the positives, right? And he filled up like, I don't know, I think 3 or 4 notebooks on that. And he was asking who, at one time, how many negatives have you put down? And I remember when I went back and I looked at this, I had 2.5 notebooks of those 70 pages, all the way full, front and back, of negative. And it took me one day to fill that up. And that's how much crap I had going on in my head, just about my identity, just about who I was. And it's fascinating because when you finally let that go and you choose to see yourself in your truth, you know, you see yourself as this being of order and of deity and of grace and of love. It literally transforms you. Like, I don't even know how to explain it, but I know for me, my transformation has been incredible. I show people pictures from 4 years ago to now, and they don't even recognize me. And it's not just because of weight loss, it's because literally my face has changed. And it's because of that radical self-care. It's because I chose me first instead of looking for everybody else's approval, everybody else's acceptance, everybody else's opinions. And I chose to see myself for my truth. And I know this has been the same for you too, because I've watched your transformation over the years, and I'm just like, holy cow, girl, like you have just turned into this glow on a regular basis. And I just, you know, it makes me so thrilled, because when I see that in women, I know that they've been doing their inner work and they have stepped into the truth of who they are and are living wholeheartedly. And that doesn't mean it's all the time, right? You just described, we have moments where we're not living wholeheartedly,
Nope.
but we don't lose it when we
Mm-mm.
don't step out, or, you know, when we step out of it, because we already know how to get back into it.
Right. There is really no starting over.
Mm-mm.
Like, you don't lose progress. You don't. You don't have to
No.
start over. And I like that you said that, you know, you would choose. And going to those same classes that you went to, I actually was like in one of my lowest points in my marriage and with my family. And I'm like, this is too hard. Like, I even like the declarations that were fairly easy, my brain's like, no, it's too much. It's too hard. You're not worth it.
Mm.
And I had to super simplify it for a long time. And it was just, today I am choosing to want, because at the time I didn't even want to eat. I didn't want to take care of myself. And so I would start with choosing to want.
Mm.
And once I started wanting, I would just say, today I choose to not lose it on my children. Today I choose to go for a walk.
So true.
And just because it's so simple that my brain doesn't have to go find it.
Right.
And it can't argue with me.
Mm-mm.
Because my problem with declarations was, I am this.
Right.
This. My brain's like, oh yeah, here's 900 reasons on why that's
Why
not
you're
true.
not. Yep.
And so I found for me, it was just so much simpler to go, today I choose. And it could even, in the moment, right now I choose.
Yes.
And if it changes, you know, I choose that. And then an hour later, I decide, I actually don't want that. That's
It's
great.
okay.
I can
Choosing again.
choose to change my mind.
That's what
And
agency is all about.
right.
Yeah. I love that. And it reminds me, because when I very first started with my whole journey too, you know, I was in the lowest place. I mean, I almost left this world. And just the fact of even wanting to choose to live was very, very difficult. So I got to go into choosing, I choose to blink today. I choose to breathe. I choose to be okay with sitting here. Like, that's how simple it had to go at the beginning for me as well, because it was just like I was so ready to be gone that anything else was almost not an option, until I started to say, I choose to just sit here for 5 minutes, you know, like it was those, you know, simple things that you almost giggle about now, but that's what
That
saved
was
my
self-care.
life. Yep.
That, I mean, in its easiest form, that's self-care.
Because you're choosing you. That
Mm-hmm.
is what self-care is all about, is you're choosing you first before all the garbage that's going on in here. And you're choosing you first before all of the emotional garbage that's throwing up. And you're choosing you first before anybody else's approval or, you know, opinions of you.
Mm-hmm.
That is what radical self-care is.
And the easiest form, the easiest way to start with self-care is just to go, what do I need right now?
Yep.
Like right now, what do I need? And your
And
brain
you
can't
can even
argue with
say, what
you.
do I want too?
Mhm.
If you don't even know what you need, you can just say, what do I want? What do I want instead of what I currently have?
Right. And it took
Mhm.
me a long time to realize that it's okay to want things. It
Yeah,
doesn't even have to be a need.
that's true.
Like,
That is true.
do I need another pair of slippers? No. Do I want them?
Yeah.
Yes.
I
Will
love
they
that.
bring me joy when I put them on? Yes.
Yes, yes, yes. It's so true. And I think another part of this too is that when we are willing to tell others what we want to bring us joy is another part of self-care too, because I think so many times as women, we tend to think that our husbands should read our minds, and our husbands think that we should read their minds, right? And so when we aren't clear on what we want, then this is where, and we want our husbands to read what we're not clear on ourselves, we build resentment. And then that's where the self-betrayal happens, because then we go into, I guess I really don't need this because my husband didn't get it for me. I guess I'm really not worth this because my husband didn't get what I wanted. And yet we didn't take the time to express it and use our voice, which is another part of self-care, is to say, hey, like this is what my husband that I'm married to now, he's amazing. I just love him. But he's so funny because when we were first married, he'd always be like, he would hint, and I hate hinting. Hinting is not my thing. Like I'm a very literal brain. And so he'd sit there and hint, and I'm just like, okay, okay. And then when his birthday or something would come, he's like, why didn't you get this for me? I'm like, I didn't know I was supposed to get anything for you. And he's like, I've been hinting this for a month. And I'm like, oh my gosh, why can't you just tell me what it is you want? And so he started learning to just say exactly what I wanted, which gave me the permission to do the same thing to him. So it's like, you know what? I want flowers. I love flowers. But I always thought that that was something my husband should do because he loves me, not because I wanted it. And so I would express that. And you know what? I get flowers almost on a weekly basis now, and it brings me so much joy. And that joy is part of that self-care, because it's like, yeah, I told him what I wanted, but you know what? He loves me enough to do what I want to bring me joy. And he doesn't have to read minds. Like, phew, right? Like we don't have to
Mhm.
read each other's minds, and that brings down that stress level so huge. And that is a way of self-caring for your husband or your partner as well.
Yeah. So my husband and I have actually had an agreement for the last 5 years that when we do Christmas, birthdays, anniversaries, Mother's Day, Father's Day, I'll just say, this is what I want for Christmas. This is what I want for my birthday. Here it is. It's in the shopping cart. I
Go
mean,
buy
it's a
it for
toy
me. Thank you.
because he does such a good job of taking care of me every single day that him getting that gift for me really isn't a sign of how much he loves me.
Mm-hmm.
And so if it's really the thing I want, then I just put it in the cart and he buys it for me. And there's actually one of the chapters in my self-care book that
Mm-hmm.
I kind of go over this a little bit. And it's, I love the flowers, like you were saying. And he is just not a romantic guy. He
Mm-hmm.
tries, but I was his first girlfriend, so he has no idea. And I didn't really bother training him. So I just decided, it's the flowers that bring me joy. He unloaded the dishwasher today without me asking him. I know he was thinking of me because he knows I hate unloading the dishwasher. I'll just go buy myself the flowers and enjoy them.
Right.
And when you can get to a place with yourself where you're like, you're connected with yourself. So your connection with other people is better and it's different. That
Yes.
you're okay just to go out and get the thing you want. It just kind of ends there, and there's like no fighting that night over why didn't you bring me flowers? I
Right.
like
There's no blaming and resentment. That's so
them.
true.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know what? We have about 15 minutes left. So we got a couple people online. Do you guys have any questions? You can go ahead and unmute yourself if you have a question or if you have a comment. Or if you don't want to talk, you can also do the chat box at the bottom here.